platforms there. There's one called Seeders and one called Crowdcube. And I think it's Seeders are starting to try and create a secondary market because just to give a bit of liquidity to people who've gone in at an early stage. So that sort of gives another opportunity for people to raise funds. But with the equity crowdfunding, it's quite early days, but I think in 6 months' time, when the proprietary company legislation is finally in place, I think it'll start to then sort of take off.
Is that legislation in the UK?
It's legislation, that's in the UK, the Companies Act is slightly different, so there's not that quite the same distinction. So when the crowdfunding legislation came into the UK, all sort of...
The legislation you're discussing, where's that?
It's here, it's Australia, yeah, sorry. Yes, so at the minute in Australia, public unlisted companies can use the legislation, and in 6 months' time, proprietary companies should be able to, yeah. So I think then it's really in terms of probably thinking about a few tips if people wanted to create a campaign, either a reward-based campaign or an equity campaign. There's two bits. There's a bit around some of the assets we mentioned, so in terms of the story, the video, the images. But at the same time as creating all of that, it's important to recognise that crowdfunding doesn't come with its crowd. So every project and every product is different. So, for example, the people who wanted to buy a snow pass for the indoor ski centre in Brisbane might be different to the people who wanted to buy some gin. I mean, it might be the same people, but it could be different, or it could be quite local projects. So it's really a case of thinking through who your particular audience is and how you're going to engage with that audience, rather than just thinking, oh, you know, there's so many million people out there, somebody will like my product or project, but they won't. It's really a case of trying to work out how you can engage with people and start off, as we said, start off quite close, start off with people that you know, start off with people who you know are going to support you on day one, because one of the things that's quite crucial is that if a campaign goes up and it sits empty for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and it gets sent to people and they see an empty campaign, then it's very hard to be the first person to support the campaign. So when you send out your campaign, it's much better if you can make sure on the first day that people that you know well, friends, family, people in your business area, people who like what you're doing, they make a firm commitment to support you on the first day. And then when you've got that first day support, and they've sort of then engaged with their friends and passed it on, then do a broader sort of email distribution at that point, because then people, when they look at it for the first time, they can see that, you know, there's some traction and they're not going to be the first people in. Some campaigns, depending what it is, they offer a limited number of something at a very, very special price, and then maybe another limited number at another price, and tell people that they know well, or people who might be interested to go in on day one, so that those people have got quite an incentive to go in first to get something there's a limited number of. So it's a case of trying to build up, and at the same time as creating the assets, be thinking about how you can build your audience and how you can get to them. So I think what you said was perfect about the other side of the Flow Hive, in terms of how actually they had a very strong marketing campaign and they had it planned out. So one of the things I'd say is it's best if you can to create a small team. So try and get a few people together, because it is quite hard work doing a campaign, and people bring different skills, and obviously everybody's got different connections and can bring different ideas to the party. So have a team, focus on creating a plan, a marketing plan, working out how you can connect with people. If you can start a couple of months out with building up your email list, so depending on what you're doing, if you can set up a landing page if you haven't got a website, try and collect email addresses, so do some social media or local word of mouth and emailing to get people to sign up to your landing page, so you've collected the email addresses, and try and connect with any bodies, etc., who are connected to the same area that you're working in, and do that part first before you launch and put together your campaign. I should have mentioned before, there's a couple of different types of campaign. You probably know this, but there's all or nothing campaigns. So on Kickstarter, they do all or nothing campaigns. So if you've asked for $20,000 and you raise 18, you get nothing. Some platforms, so ReadyFundGo and Indiegogo, we both do all or nothing or flexible campaigns. So a flexible campaign is where you've asked for $20,000, you raise 18 and you get to keep your 18. And the circumstances when we enable you to do that is if the rewards that you're offering are things that you can deliver in any event, then we're happy for you to have a flexible campaign. If your project is such that you can't deliver the rewards unless you've made the full amount, and you need that full amount, that's the only way you can get the funds, then it has to be an all or nothing campaign. With ReadyFundGo, one of the things where we're a little bit different is just that if you've got a flexible campaign, we recognise that for startups, and that's mainly who we work with in community type projects, people tend to need the money quite soon in terms of cash flow and to get going. So you get your share of the funds immediately as a pledge comes through. You don't need to wait until the end of the campaign, because most platforms make you wait until the end of the campaign before you get your share of the funds. So hopefully that gives sort of a bit of an overview about how you can use it as a startup or a scale-up business, and then the community type projects. With community type projects, some projects are set up as donation-based projects, and some people try and think of rewards. That might be there's an event and selling tickets for an event, or they might be creating something. So we did one, it was a tour for, there was somebody in South Africa who is in his early 80s, and he had Parkinson's, and he'd walked off his Parkinson's disease, or learned how to, and was done a lot of research around neuroscience, and he wanted to come to Australia to spread the message. So with the exchange rate from South Africa, it was really expensive. So we did a campaign selling tickets for events around Australia for people who were interested in hearing him talk, and we raised the funds to pay for his flight from South Africa. And he actually spent, it's amazing, he spent about 2 to 3 months in Australia and New Zealand, going around every so many days, different places. And I think by the end of his tour, he'd seen nearly 2,500 people, just at different talks and stuff, and he'd managed to get people in local communities to engage and set up talks. So it's amazing what you can make happen in different ways with crowdfunding. So, is anybody got any questions or anything else that you think I've missed or you'd like to hear about?
One thought I had is you talked about building an email list before you launch, and we've been using Telegram, and I think that'd be a great mechanism for creating a community before you launch a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, no, that would be. Do you want to go through that a bit more in terms of how?
Janie, do you want to? You've been more involved in Telegram than I have.
The Telegram community is great, but it's quite specific, industry specific. I think I'm not sure what the applications are outside. So in our cryptocurrency blockchain space, it's sort of been adopted by that community. So for us, that's growing rapidly. I don't know.
I can jump in. Sorry. The stats on Telegrams, yesterday it hit 200 million actives, and it's growing at 500,000 a day.
Wow.
So it's certainly broadening the base. It sort of seemed to get going really around ICOs and cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and things, but it's grown beyond that.
And they just raised $1 billion on their own ICO, so they've got funding to continue to grow.
What we found with it is, so we've got 48,000 likes on Facebook or something, but it doesn't create a conversation.
Yep.
Whereas Telegram, suddenly you get this conversation going. It's often the case where you've got, it could be 1% that are chatting, 99% that are listening.
Yep.
But it gets this conversation where people pop in their questions, they get them answered, and the community themselves.
And in that way, like
answer it.
crowdfunding, it's sort of like community gathering, because the community run the conversation, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
We've been really surprised at the number of ambassadors out there that, we've got a staff member who welcomes everybody, but when she's sleeping, other members of the community just jump in and welcome on Andrea's behalf.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
Right. Okay,
That's
pretty
great.
cool. Andrea wakes up, jumps on. Oh, thanks, Jim, for welcoming Jenny.
I'll go back to sleep.
It's like social media on steroids, but it's all of the best bits of every other platform together.
Okay.
And it's also got a big philosophy behind it of not stealing your private information like Facebook does.
So it's a decentralised messaging system as well, where all of the information is stored.
Hashtag delete Facebook, go to Telegram.
Telegram.
It
So it's
really is just a messaging. People type.
You can do it as a locked community or you can do it as open, and it works when you do it as an open community.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we could do individual Telegram messaging between me and anyone in the room.
Okay, so we could set up our own group and just...
Yeah, we could set up a group for this,
Yeah.
or we could have an individual one between you and I, or, and it's a lot like WhatsApp
Yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah, okay.
But when you just open it to the world,
Yeah.
yeah, I was really surprised at the uptake and
Yeah,
the engagement.
that
So
sounds
it's a
fantastic,
community
actually.
builder for us. We're working across so many different platforms. As a community building admin team, we've decided that's our only place that we communicate. That's how.
That's fantastic. Because often when people are starting campaigns, they come and said, oh, well, we've got, you know, Matt said we've got 3,000 likes on Facebook, but actually that doesn't really translate into very much. You know, it's great to have 3,000 likes rather than not have 3,000 likes, but because somebody's liked on Facebook doesn't mean they're going to actually part with any funds to support your campaign, or that they're actually engaged or really
At the point-
interested in
At
terms
the point
of...
that we were introduced to the concept of Telegram, or that we became aware that it was really important, we were told that investors actually go to your Telegram, and it's only when you get at scale in your Telegram they'll even consider
Okay.
what you're actually presenting.
Yeah.
So it's really
So
powerful
there was
that way.
advice coming out of a guy in Silicon Valley who said it's just, this is what's happened here.
Yeah,
Telegram's in a bit at the moment.
yeah.
This is like in the last 2 weeks. That investors are just looking at any kind of startup, going to look to their Telegram channel, going, oh,
It's not
there's
a-
10,000 people chatting about this product, I'll put my money in because they've got that
Mm.
kind of community.
Yeah.
So it's a way of proving you've got a community with like active conversation about it, people getting excited that your bottle of gin's coming or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's be really interesting because
What if the community you're wanting to build a product for isn't a social media community?
Yeah.
Like, and that's
Okay,
that
yes, yeah,
agriculture.
yes. Yeah, that's a good point, because I think there's a different ways of doing it, but sometimes sometimes the crowdfunding campaign, just the link can be a way of having a story and letting people put funds on it. But actually email is a very good way, so getting the email distribution list is a very good way for a crowdfunding campaign, because it's a bit more personal sometimes, and it's really a direct way to communicate with people. So I think email is still a very good way of, and I would highly recommend that people do try and build their email list or might be Telegram list beforehand and before we start a campaign.
I think it's finding what works for each area because
Yeah.
it's, you know, doing crypto is like, oh, Telegram's where we have to be.
Yeah,
You know, it took us a while to get to that point
Yeah.
and working it out. But, you know, agriculture or something, it could be like literally the old town hall meeting
yeah,
type.
yeah.
Just getting people together and, you know, in groups to face to talk. Because it's all about that inner circle of hyper influences. It's something I sort of learned years ago doing computer games and globally that when I launched a game in 2010, just focused on getting 30 advisors as part of the game that were people playing the game that would be hyper connected on Facebook, but particularly Skype.
So influencers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was recognising that most of the people don't even want to spend any time talking to me, but they know someone who can, and so they go, oh, it's, you know, 30 very quickly reached 3,000 users. That's kept growing, and it's, you know, to this day it's really around having 30 of these close advisors in amongst the community.
And face-to-face conversations with those people in ag.
That's all I've been focusing on.
Also, when we did the campaign around Andersen, it was the startup that was looking at selling it directly to people. We did local radio, did something on local radio and the local paper as well. And as I said, we did quite a lot around talking to the politicians, the local politicians as well, and doing events with them. And we did a launch with Parliament House with inviting some of the farmers along as well as the people who are going to support the campaign in the community.
So with your ag fund, that's an agricultural specific.
Yes, that's an equity crowdfunding platform for ag tech projects and renewable energy type projects. That one where we're talking to people and going through with them how to build a campaign, but we're waiting for the proprietary company legislation. So it's going to be probably about 5 months. So it depends when the legislation comes in, that we'll be able to actually put the campaign up and raise funds. But we're already talking to people about their projects.
Because that's something that particularly interests me, because we're at the stage where we've done conceptual sales.
Okay.
So we'll list of conceptual sales. We've got partnerships with other ag tech startups.
Okay.
But we need to go into the manufacturing. We've got a minimum viable product, it's tried, it's
Okay.
tested, and we've got the manufacturing stage that we're going into.
Okay. What's your...
Go for it, tell us all.
This might be a conversation we have outside of the forum.
Yes. Okay.
But it particularly interests me that you've seen a need for an ag tech area, and I can see how it is quite different because of the different association it needs to have with different connections from a broader reach.
We've actually, there's more farmers that I found on Twitter than I expected actually on Twitter, so that seemed quite a good mechanism as well.
Yeah.
Yes, but we can catch after this. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find any community that's not in socials in some way. I know farmers and they're on Facebook, and I can't think of a demographic of society that wouldn't be involved in socials.
That might be I don't know, because that's curious, because that might be a Victoria versus Tassie in terms of culture of community thing, but I can still walk down the street and people I'm quite heavily involved in social media, but I can still walk down the street and people say, what are you doing these days? And it's like, people in our community aren't on social media.
But it's also a trust thing, I found, with social media. A lot of farmers might be engaged in social media, but they don't necessarily trust it enough to put money across a social media platform. And the face-to-face with farmers, I found a lot more. So social media is good for marketing and knowledge base.
To drive them to the town hall where you can then get face-to-face.
Yeah. That's just personal.
Crowdfunding is no different to any marketing campaign. It is a marketing campaign.
It's a tool.
It's a tool in the kit bag that will do it. And it's really hard for an individual, one person, to have any success with it because it is a marketing campaign. It is a marketing tool. It is. It can be great, but it has to be strategic.
Is there a cost involved?
That's a good question. The cost depends on the platform, but the standard costings roughly, well, for Ready Fund Go we charge 5% of the funds raised.
Yes.
So if you raise no funds, there's no charge. Every platform also has a payment mechanism or merchant account. So we use Stripe, and the fees for Stripe are 1.75% transaction, so 1.75% plus 30 cents a transaction for domestic cards, and it's slightly more for international cards. And that's pretty much the same across the board. For equity crowdfunding, the fees are slightly higher. For equity crowdfunding, it's around about 7.5%, and sometimes for equity crowdfunding, there's a fee up front for the due diligence before something goes onto a platform. People then can then decide if they want other, they can do things themselves, or they can, if they want a landing page or other things, they can work out how to get those, or they can help with that kind of thing, depends.
So logistically, someone has a campaign on this, and I want to donate for a small reward.
Yes.
Would have my money exits my bank account and goes into yours?
Okay, no, so it depends what type of campaign.
Yes.
So if it's an all or nothing campaign, you would put your credit card details in. Stripe would take effectively an imprint, but they don't take any money from your card until the campaign reaches its goal. And then when it reaches its goal, then the money will come off your card and it will then be split between going to effectively if we can all just do it, strike charges, but 95% going to the campaign creator and 5% to us at that point. If it's a flexible campaign, so the person who set the campaign up is going to get their funds, whatever, then when you pledge with your card, the funds come off your card immediately, and 95%, say, ignore the credit charges, goes to the campaign creator at that point, and 5% comes to us at that point. But we don't hold the money.
So to pay the 1.75 and the 30 cents, who pays that?
The person who's created the campaign, so it comes off that, yes.
So they've got to pay it at the end, or it just comes off?
It comes off that payment, yeah. So they get
so they go
90
cents,
yeah.
like that.
They get sort of 90. It depends on the.
You're right.
But 93. Yeah.
90-ish.
Yeah, 93-ish. Yeah.
90-ish.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a trap for young players. We've seen previously where they've gone, I've worked out what I need $5,000, so they've asked for $5,000, but they actually needed to have added that additional administration fee, or else they've got to come up with that.
Yeah, exactly.
10% more.
So yeah, add that to your budget when you're requesting.
You're looking at around 10%.
Yeah. Just a very broad terms. Yeah. I've actually got another platform, the Inspire a Star platform. That's for young athletes, so when people, it's very early days. But on that platform, it's just set up slightly differently, is that if somebody is looking at raising $1,000, they put into the platform, I'm looking for raising $1,000, and then when it goes onto the site, it adds it on, so it shows slightly more, so that they haven't had to do the calculation, just to make it a bit simpler for them. But most platforms do it the way of you put the amount that you want and the fees come off it.
Is that just for athletes? You're going to use that for talent as well, so musical or acting or?
Well, it was it's been designed just for sport actually, but yeah,
So
yeah,
working-
yeah, it could be
yeah.
used, yeah, yeah.
So I work in a creative artists camp.
Okay.
Here of Tasmania.
Okay. Well, we did have somebody actually on Ready Fund Go who, it was they were a dancer and they'd got accepted to an academy that they really wanted to go to in New Zealand, and so they were trying to raise some funds, and I think they're about age 17, 18, and it was more like their profession, and so they came onto Ready Fund Go, and so we talked about whether they could actually give any rewards to people as well as just taking the funds, and they agreed to do some local sort of displays for the local community and events. So that was quite nice. We got to engage.
Actually, a local artist, Paul Snell, used Ready Fund to Go and to do an installation, and he gave little paintings and things like that, so that he could afford to pay for the materials to make the installation.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So it sounds like Ready Fund Go actually provides some mentoring around helping people to get their campaigns to a point of successful. Is that standard, or is that just some random people who've reached out and you've been able to help?
Well, we try and help people if we can. That's how we try and differentiate ourselves from Kickstarter. But yeah, we try to if we can. Yes,
Yeah.
because I think if people are starting campaigns, there is a bit of education just in terms of some tips in terms of how to do it to get going.
And then that's great for the platform because you're more likely to have success, which will,
yes,
And there's a booklet, an e-booklet.
Yes, what I'll do is afterwards, there's some slides in today, and there's also just a guide about creating a campaign that might be helpful.
Yeah.
If anyone's got any feedback, please do feedback, and you're very welcome to take on board how we can do better.
Yes.
What sort of audience have you got of existing investors that could be tapped into when you launch on Ready Fund?
Well, it's the people. It's more project based. So people are. I mean, we're not the size of Kickstarter by any stretch of the imagination. So we're sort of most of the campaigns are Australian campaigns, because that's our market, and we're just trying to grow Australia. So on Facebook we've got just about 4,500 likes on Facebook, but we've now engaged some people there's a guy who used to work for Facebook, but it sounds like we should be looking at Telegraph as well, just possibly to expand that. Telegram, sorry, to look at that. And
yeah, it could work.
then
You could have a community of
got
people saying, hey, check out this new project that's just launched.
Yeah.
And they'll all get chatting about it.
Yeah, and then we've also, there's a company called Idea Spies that we've also sometimes put some of the ideas onto Idea Spies, and they sort of get them to like it on there.
Yeah.
And then we've got the newsletter. We send out things in the newsletter as well, and we've got put on Twitter and Instagram perhaps. So yeah, just growing.
Is there a main difference between you and GoFundMe?
Yes, one of the things, we actually send quite a few people to GoFundMe, because what we tend to do on Ready Fund Go is we try to do business startups, growing businesses, community type projects. But if somebody's got an individual sort of personal case, so if somebody in their family is unwell,
Yes.
we normally say on those to go to GoFundMe, because I think they tend to do more of those types of campaigns. So we do.
One tear from your eye campaigns.
Well, yeah, there's different types of campaigns. So we do send people to GoFundMe for those individual type campaigns.
In the community I'm in, GoFundMe has a little bit of a reputation of begging. A bit of a, you know, the wipe a tear from your eye, my house has been burnt down, my dog's dead campaign.
Yeah, we
Which
sometimes
sounds more
yeah,
professional.
some people do start those types of campaigns, and we tend to say, well, actually, it's GoFundMe that does those types of campaigns. So we do send people that
So
way.
you moderate your own campaigns and.
Yeah, we don't actually. There's a lot of campaigns that started, but we probably only put up. Well, I was a bit worried the other day when I thought actually it's only probably about 10% that we put up, but actually we probably put up maybe about 20%. But some people start and then they don't finish, or it's not, they haven't really thought through it, or it doesn't look like it's going to, it's really viable. So we do moderate them, and we talk to everybody before they go live on the site. I'm sure that someday we'll have somebody who doesn't do what they said they were going to do, but we try to make sure that where we can, we've.
So
done
is
what
that
we can.
like is it the Me project that happened in America, where it was a camera that would follow you? So it was a follow me kind of drone camera thing, and they did a massive campaign, and they got early adopter sales through the funding, you know, crowdfunding kind of project. So all these people had bought one, you know, which was to fund the manufacturing of it, and they hadn't tested the minimum viable product, and that only made 2 prototypes, and they had miscalculated everything, and the whole thing went bust.
Yeah. So far we haven't had that, touch wood, but I'm sure that there's
And
a
that's the
risk,
thing, that's the whole thing that qualifies.
Yeah, but we could never say that wouldn't happen, because it could happen.
It's high risk, as you said
We've got
earlier.
to try
It's
and
bound to happen at some
yeah,
point.
it will. Yeah,
Startups.
so we've got to try and do
Qualify as much
yeah,
as you can.
yes, and try to see if it makes sense.
Do you require, as part of the diligence that you put forward in the campaign, that people actually say, this is why we think it's going to work? You know, this is the testing we've done,
well,
or the...
We normally talk to them about it
Yes.
and try and find out. On the equity crowdfunding campaigns, there's quite a lot of due diligence that goes on there as part of it, because to do equity crowdfunding you need an ASIC licence, and as part of that licensing you've got to put certain steps in place you've got to go through. So that's, but it's not the requirement on the reward type campaigns.
Is it a worry for your platform that something like that might happen, and then people might sue you and say, we've just put all of our money and our eggs into this basket, and you know, it's taken our life savings? Or
Yeah, I guess it's one of the things that we try to sort of put a few disclaimers on, but yes. It's something that I guess we've got to hope doesn't happen, but one day it probably will happen. But then the relationship is strictly between the individual and the...
Yeah.
But
you're just a conduit, not the actual, you're not making the promise.
That could happen.
Sure,
Yeah.
So I just have, if there are any other questions, and I know people might want to get away, so I just had one question, not from the crowdfunding perspective, but there's some female entrepreneurs here, and for any entrepreneur in the room. You've worked at a really high level, so you've worked in Hong Kong, the UK and Australia with Andersen's, KPMG, Deloitte's running, I think I ran $100 million projects for them. As somebody coming up, and like most of us are in business or startups, etc., coming up through the ranks, how do you earn that credibility? Like, you know your stuff. How do you get to sit at those big tables without compromising who you are, and not just as a woman, just as anybody wanting to break into those big conversations and have that credibility? Do you have any tips?
I think it's difficult, because I think, and I should say for everybody, I think if you're doing something that you're passionate about and you love doing, and you recognise that it takes quite a long time, and you just need to keep doing it and persevering with it, then I think over time, if you feel like you're doing the right things, sometimes things work out. But I think and other people in the room probably got much more experience than I have in terms of around startups, because it's a relatively new area. But I think just the sort of small experience I've got in it is that it does take longer than sometimes you think. So you sometimes think you'll get there quite quickly, but actually it is a journey, and there are ups and downs along the way, and it's really just trying to make sure that you keep going and maybe try to surround yourself with good people and keep learning, and recognise that every day there's still a lot more you can learn, and just trying to take that approach. I don't know if anybody else has got any other suggestions, because I think a lot more people have done different things as well. So if anybody's, I know people have different businesses in the room, if anybody else has got tips, please please share them.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's recognising that the community's got to come from people who have a passion for something. Like a lot of the crowdfunding that I see works really well is finding, I don't know, the bee project, for example, I think is much more about the concern of the world's losing bees and everything else. Like it's much more an environmental issue that
They make it
drives people.
accessible.
Yeah, I mean, I can get honey from the supermarket,
Yeah.
but if I do this, I'm helping have more bees in the world.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And it's just, whether it's fishing or computer games or anything else, that, you know, in doing games, when I first built games company up in Singapore, it was all the funding came from gamers. You know, literally 100% came from gamers. So it's finding people, you know, the money in an agricultural product, it's going to come from people who understand agriculture and have a passion for it. Because there's not enough, you know, metrics and data and everything else in an early stage business for someone to make an informed decision as an accountant. They've got to do it from a heart.
Yeah.
You know, that's why they've got to have some, knowledge of the space. And they go, oh, I know this will work.
Yeah.
You know, it's much more gut feel.
Yeah.
It's all about the energy, Dave.
It's good energy.
Janie's always thinking more about energy.
Well, if that's everybody's questions, we might just thank Jill this morning. Clap and hold the camera. And Jill, we be around for 5 minutes if people want to have a chat.
Yeah.
So thanks again for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.